ego mind gets a hold of any concept, it always tries to use it against us. And this includes the topic of humility. Now remember that the ego is not an entity. It's not something outside of us. It's not something to be afraid of. The ego is simply a device that we have constructed within our minds to attempt to keep us separate from our good, to keep us feeling separate from one another and definitely separate from our source. And our use of this device is simply a habit that we have picked up over the centuries, and we have not stopped using it. But it's not necessary. We don't need it. But when the ego gets a hold of any concept, its idea, its whole function is to use whatever it is to convince us that we are separate and to separate us. The only way to separate yourself from your source is to recognize that, first of all, your source is all good. And so to be different, to differentiate yourself from all good, the only way to do that is to try to conceive of yourself as being not good. And oftentimes, for some people, that is, the idea is to be evil, is to do horrible, evil things. But for the bulk of us, it's to just feel not good enough. It's as if we are defective some way. When we see ourselves as being separate, it's so painful that rather than question it and realize, whoa, wait a minute, this is just an erroneous thought form that's not real. Instead of doing that, we are so afraid of that feeling of pain that we try to get rid of it. And the way that we try to get rid of it is by projecting it outwards. And you can see that very, very clearly just in your day-to-day life, how easy it is to look at somebody else's faults or look at somebody else's problems or blame somebody else for something. And it's either blaming someone or some circumstance or something outside of yourself. And that's just a routine that we have picked up because we believe on some level, even though we don't do it consciously often anymore because it's so habitual, we are attempting to get rid of the pain. We are attempting to get rid of that existential pain of feeling separate, of that loneliness, that feeling of not good enough, that feeling of I'm unworthy, all of the things that we need to concoct for ourselves in order to carve out separation from perfection, all those imperfections. And we can take it up to a certain point. We can tolerate pain up to a certain point, and then we can't tolerate it anymore. And then rather than questioning the whole thought system and saying, maybe this isn't really true, we instead, like I said, we hurl it outside and we project it onto other things and other people. And that's when we really get into trouble, because then we are interacting with this pseudo world that is our own concoction, basically. And we get lost and mired in that, and we start really believing that it's real and not ever questioning it. And I don't necessarily mean to say that the world outside, the world that we live in, is not real. That could be possible, but our experience of it is not real. The roles that we assign to things and people are not real, and those roles and our understanding of what they represent to us are usually not things that we ever question, because those things are so entrenched in our understanding of who we are and how we fit in with the world. So we just take for granted a lot of things, and that includes arrogance and humility. To the ego, arrogance is thinking that you're any good. Humility is thinking that you're bad. And we see that. We pretty much believe that. Well, it's just me. I'm not good enough. That's humility from the ego's point of view. And that's arrogance and humility for the purpose of keeping you feeling separate. But the reality is that you were not created that way. You were not created separate. You were not created less than. You were not created imperfect. You were not created not good enough. You were created perfect. God didn't screw up with you. God didn't make a mistake when God made you. God knew exactly what they were doing when God made you. And when they made you, you are simply an extension of that source. As we say, like a beam of light from the sun, from a central sun. So that beam of light from the central sun isn't separate. It's not different from the sun, but it's unique. It's unique. There's no other beam quite like it. There's no wave of the ocean that is separate from the ocean, but each wave is unique. And there's never another wave like them. Well, for you, your uniqueness is also inherent in your connection with that one power of the universe. You were created unique. You were created special in that way. But from the ego's point of view, specialness is different. Specialness to the ego is separate. And remember, to separate out something from perfection, you have to make it imperfect. So when you use those ego terms to think in terms of humility and arrogance, we get it really mixed up. To the ego mind, like I said, humility is I'm not very important, I'm not very good, I'm less than. That's me being humble. Arrogant is me thinking I'm something. But to spirit, it's humility to say, I am as a sunbeam to the sun. I am a unique divine expression of the perfection of infinite intelligence. I have everything that I need. At all moments of time and points of space, I have everything I need to express myself perfectly, to do the things that I came here to do, the things that bring me joy. That to spirit, that's humility. That's not you being trying to separate yourself from the source, right? That's you functioning as an extension of the source. That's humble. Arrogance is I'm not that great. God messed up with me. Look at me. I'm not good enough. Things are really wrong with me and my life. And that's how special I am. I am so special that God really messed up, or God completely forgot about me. That's how special I am. I am a sunbeam that is all by itself with no central sun. God created me and forgot me because I'm so special. That's very, very different. So remember that from the spirit's point of view, humility and arrogance are the complete opposite as what they are to the ego. Now, part of the issue also that we have to ask ourselves is, are our goals in life humble or arrogant? What are my goals? What am I trying to achieve? Am I trying to achieve something that's going to further my ego's arrogance, or am I trying to achieve something that's going to further my soul's journey, the reason I came here? Because a lot of times when we say, make a list of the things that you want to be, do, and have, that's just to get things, to get your pump primed, to prime the pump, so that you can start to look and see, well, what are the things that I love? What are the things that I love to do? What would my perfect day look like? What would I be doing? What would I be saying? What kinds of things would I have around me? What does that look like? And to the ego, that's the total arrogance. No. You should be doing this, or you should be having that, or you should be doing this. Something that distracts you away from what your soul's journey is, what brings you joy. You have to have a lot of money, or you have to have a certain kind of house, or you have to have a certain kind of car. And a lot of times those goals are fine to have, but many times those goals are arrogant goals, because we're not questioning, is that what I really want? Or is that just a hunger that my ego is presenting to me to distract me from my true desires? So sometimes our goals in life, we cut ourselves short by listening to the arrogance of the ego in thinking that it's my heart's desire when it's simply a hunger, simply a little lust that the ego is presenting for us in order to quell our deep-seated hunger for a connection with our source. And a lot of times, if we were to say, okay, let's write those down, but let's keep going. Let's go underneath that. Why do I want this? Why do I want that? Why do I want that? What will this bring me? And when we sit and find the essence of what we truly want, then sometimes our goals are very, very different, are very, very different. So when you are looking practically at your magic, you have to ask yourself, are my goals arrogant or are they humble? And it's, again, nothing to feel ashamed of. It's just that you want humble goals, because if there's humility with your goals, then that means that you are connected to your source, and that you are on the beam of what your soul's journey is, and therefore you don't have to fight so hard to get what you want. It just happens. It happens because it's natural for you. It's just natural for you. But let's take a look at what I'm talking about here. So let's say that you wanted a specific car. There's nothing wrong with wanting that car. That you wanted this, whatever. You wanted a Kia or something like that was a specific model and a specific color. That's fine. Look at that. I want that. But what do I want it for? Is a lot of times what people forget to ask themselves. Why do I want that? Why do I need that particular car? Why do I want that particular color? What is it going to give me? What is it doing for me? What does that represent for me? And at first, many times people say, I don't know. I just want it. Well, let's just break it down. What is it going to give to you? Well, it's going to give me freedom of transportation. It's going to enable me to drive around in a way that's comfortable. I feel so. It was freedom and comfort, definitely. Mobility, freedom, comfort, mobility. And I love that color because it makes me feel good. Okay, freedom, mobility, comfort, and joy. So that's the essence of what you want. Now, if you realized that and you say, okay, I'm still going to use this image of this particular car, but I recognize now that just represents what my true goal is. And then you list the essence of what your true goal is. And then you say, so therefore I want this or something better according to what my soul understands. This or something better according to what I'm here to do, what I'm here to be, and what I'm here to have. So then when it comes around, you may get that car, or you might get something even better that's going to make you feel even better. And so therefore now your goal hasn't really changed as far as the form, but it's changed in content. Because now you aren't really going for the car, you're going for the essence, and you are open to having the essence manifest in whatever forms are really truly for your highest good. And it's always so much better than what you could have come up with on your own. But it's just a product of asking yourself, is this an arrogant goal of the ego, meaning I want this and I want this just because I want it? And remember that the ego's ultimate goal is to keep you separate. So you know if you didn't get to underneath what that was, that if you just stopped with the ego's goal, that goal would eventually cause you problems and pain and hurt, even down to the fact that maybe, as soon as you get it, now you want something else because it's not really satisfying to you because it's just another whim of the ego. Whereas if you recognize that underneath that, there are these true soul goals of yours, the goals of your soul that need to be fulfilled, and that from your understanding that it is in the form of this car or whatever it is, then your goal has shifted in content. The form looks the same in your mind, but the content is completely different, and therefore you're open to the form changing according to your highest good. Now, some people are very sorcerous about the way they live their lives and definitely the way they work their magic. And they say, no, I want what I want when I want it. But the arrogance of that is thinking that you really know what you want. thinking that you really know what's going to make you happy. If you knew what was going to make you happy, you'd probably already be happy. You'd probably already be doing it. So what the ego mind does is it likes to keep us really busy with a bunch of carrots dangling before our face saying, okay, yeah, I know you don't think you're happy, but if you only get this thing. And then as soon as you get that thing, it's, yeah, but remember this one is over there now. Oh, look at that shiny thing over there. And constantly keeping you moving, and never questioning, wait a minute, are my goals arrogant or are they humble? Am I on the track of my soul or am I on the track of my ego? There's no judgment. It's just you'd like to know. Because once you know, then you can choose again if you want to. If you want to get off that track, you can get on the right track. But that's a game that we play, is being distracted by the ego mind constantly and convincing ourselves that we're being humble when we're being arrogant, and vice versa. Another thing about humility is that sometimes when we look back over our lives and we look back and we think about how we made mistakes and we feel guilty about the things that we've done in the past, that's an arrogant point of view. It's arrogant to look back and say, oh, I was just so bad. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Having all that regret. Now, on one hand, it's good to have regret. It's good to have remorse because it really lets you know that the sociopathic tendencies are not there. So that's a good thing. We don't want to hurt people. We do want to have remorse for our mistakes, yes. But we don't want to dwell there. And see, what the ego does with that is it thinks it's being humble by allowing us to put ourselves down for what we did in the past. But that's not how Spirit sees things. Spirit says, whoa, you really did well. You really learned a lesson. You've really turned things around. You took that, whatever it was, and you made it really positive by learning your lessons. And look at you now. Aren't you amazing? That's the humility of the soul. The arrogance of the ego is, oh, I really messed up and I was just a horrible person. I can't believe I did that, or I'm so embarrassed that I made that mistake, or whatever it is. And never getting you to the point of, but I learned so much and I'm really on the right track now. And I feel so good about the fact that I learned my lesson and things are well and things are good now. Because it sees that, it convinces us that, no, that's kind of arrogant. You're not paying the price for what you did. Because that's what the ego does, is the ego keeps score. The ego keeps score and retaliates constantly. That's what it's there for. We've created that for ourselves. So there's a constant scorekeeping and then retaliation. So we sometimes it looks like we're retaliating against other people. We're always retaliating against ourselves. That's the ultimate goal of the ego, is to ultimately wants to kill you. It's an insanity. It's this insane part of our mind that we've just kind of glommed onto and we've never given it up. It's this sort of addiction that we have to this part of our mind that ultimately it just wants to kill you because it has so much contempt for you. And so then it convinces you that you have contempt for yourself. And that's not true. You don't have contempt for yourself, but because you identify so much with the ego and you think that's who you are, and see what happens is the ego convinces you to be, do, or have certain things, and then you go ahead and be, do, and have those things, and it doesn't work out so well for you, which the ego knew very well it wouldn't. And then the ego comes around and says, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Look at what you did. And then it convinces you that you're being humble. Those are the kinds of games we play with ourselves. But instead, the soul doesn't see things that way at all. God does not hold your past against you. No matter what you've done, no matter what you've said, no matter what you haven't done, no matter what mistakes you've made, or no matter what things you've left undone or unsaid. God does not hold that against you. God has a very different perspective of you than you do, because you're listening to the wrong voice. You're listening to the voice of that little device that we call the ego, that's there to just convince you to stay separate. So when you recognize the difference between what the ego and the world calls humility and arrogance versus the truth about what humility and arrogance is, things start looking very different for you. Because it's humble for you to accept your role here, to accept your unique role here, to accept the fact that you were created unique. That's humble. That you have a certain bunch of strengths and a bunch of talents and certain things that you do better than anybody else and in ways that nobody else could handle. And to accept that and start to act like it and start to respond to the world in the way that you are unique, that are your talents, the things that are so blessed about you, that's very, very humble. That's you doing your job. It's you being the sunbeam that you are. It's just you being you. How more humble can you get? And then you notice that you get successful. Then you notice that things work out for you. And that's because you are operating as a connected sunbeam to the sun. You're operating connected to your soul, connected also to your source. But when you start operating with the ego's point of view of what humble is, all you get is a bunch of, I'm not good enough. I'm bad. Why can't I get anything right? How come I'm so stupid? And why doesn't anything ever work out for me? That's the ego's version of humility, which is just backwards. Now, the ultimate, sometimes arrogance that we have is that we think we created ourselves. So we have this bizarre idea that we created ourselves, that we're sort of self-created, and we endow ourselves with all kinds of weird powers that we don't have, that we don't want. We believe that we are the author of our own soul, that we are the author of our own universe, that we are the author of our own selves. We don't question it. We don't even realize that that's what we're doing. But if you look at how you act, if you look at how you interact with the world, you can see that that's exactly what you're doing. You don't realize that you are part of a greater experience. You don't act as if you're just, I'm a beam of light being sent out as an extension of the creator, the one creator of the entire universe. That's not usually how we interact with people. Usually we interact with people by saying, I'm going to make a decision by myself, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to have what I want to have, I'm going to get what I want to get. And when things don't work out, I'm going to blame everybody but myself, or I'm going to blame myself and think, and reinforce this idea that I'm not good enough. But that's self-creating. That's us believing that we created our own selves. And in a way we did. You made up that whole personality. You made up all that stuff. That's what you made. But that's not who you are. And you didn't create yourself. You didn't create yourself. No matter how much you do that, no matter how arrogant you get, you can't uncreate yourself. You can't make yourself bad. You can't make yourself less than. You can't undo what God has done. It's impossible. God's work is not for you to undo, but you can convince yourself that you've done that. You can convince yourself that you've done that. You can convince yourself that you're all alone. You can convince yourself that nothing will ever work for you. You can convince yourself of all kinds of arrogant thought forms. But recognize that arrogance is you trying to think all by yourself, carving out your own little universe all by yourself. Now think about in the body. Think about the body, just the physical body. When a cell doesn't do what it was created to do, but it decides to carve out its own world for itself. It wants to carve out its own universe for itself. It wants to do its own thing. It doesn't want to be part of the whole. It wants to be arrogant. That then becomes it recruiting other cells to do it too. And then that turns into a malignancy, right? It turns into a disease. And so we don't want that. We don't want that for ourselves. We don't want to create a disease in the mind of humanity. We don't want to be part of that cancer that exists in the mind of humanity. We want to be one of those white blood cells in the mind of humanity. And those white blood cells are constantly bringing healing everywhere they go. And why? Because they stay humble. They stay humble because they're just here to do what they're here to do, right? They're here to do, the humility is, I'm here to be myself. I'm not here to create a different person than who I am. I'm just here to be myself. When you're yourself, you're being humble. And that means that you're interacting with the world the way you were created to interact with the world. And that means that you're a healing presence. Because you didn't create yourself. God created you perfect. So if you're being yourself, you're being perfect. You're doing what you came here to do. But what we do when we think, oh, I better create this part of my personality. I better act in a certain way that people will like me. I better act in a certain way so that I don't ruffle feathers. I better act in this way or that way or another way. That's arrogant. That's creating a false pseudo-personality that's blocking the expression of who we are because we don't think it's safe to be ourselves. In fact, we think it's arrogant to be ourselves. But it's not arrogant to be yourself. It's humble to be yourself. Nobody else is like you. It's not arrogant to recognize that. It's humble because you aren't responsible for that. You didn't create yourself. So why would that be arrogant? Can you see how arrogant it is to say, no, I'm not that special. I'm not that good. I'm not. What that's saying is the creative power of the universe that created me isn't very good. It really isn't very good. So every single time you're down on yourself or try to prove to the world how bad you are, look how arrogant that is. Now let's go back to goals for just 1 second before we complete. How we talked about, do you have an arrogant goal or do you have a humble goal? Well, you can always know that you've got the right goal, and we show this when we do those basic talismans. If your first goal is peace, if your first goal is always peace, then all the goals that come out of that are always going to be humility-based goals because the ego can't exist in peace. The ego hates it. The ego can't do peace because it was created to be against it. The whole function of the ego, the reason why we made it, the reason why we have that little device in our mind is to thwart peace, because peace is who we are. You are peace. Peace is who you are at your core. Okay, that's where you and your creator are one, is in a place of peace. And so if your goal is peace, then you know that your goal is humble. So if your white Kia is an extension of that peace, then you know that your white Kia is a humble goal. If your goal for that job is an extension of peace, then you know that you've got a humble goal because you know that it's not an end unto itself. I know that I need a job, but I also know that I'm a peaceful being. My peace is the heart of who I am. Therefore, I know that in this world, even though it looks like I need a job, I understand that job is simply there so that I can extend more of the peace of my creator. And so, therefore, when you let that be your goal, then of course you're going to get the perfect job where you need to be, doing what you need to do so that you can bring the most good, because you're one of those white blood cells in this world. You're there to do what you came here to do. And you can do that in every single moment. You can choose humility over arrogance based on whoever you're dealing with and whatever you're dealing with. You recognize, wait a minute, I'm not here for my own agenda. That's arrogant. I'm here to bring peace into this situation. Now, I'm not here to bring peace, meaning I know what that looks like, and I'm going to force peace on this situation. No, that's what the ego would tell you. I'm just here to shine. I'm just here to be myself. I'm here to be the sunbeam. I'm just here to shine. And that peace is going to take care of itself because it's got its own intelligence that works through me. And if all I do is be here willing to be humble and to shine and to be myself, I know that I can't help but A, heal everything that's around me, be part of the healing of everything that's around me, and B, always have my needs met. I'm always going to have that's going to always be a package deal, is what I say. It's a package deal. It's going to come with all the money I need, with all the people I need, with all the resources I need, and definitely with all the joy I need. Right? So my being humble and just being myself is a package deal because it includes everything. And so you know that you're on the right beam if you know that your first goal is always going to be peace. So I'm going to walk into this, into this meeting with these people, even though the goal of the meeting is to, is whatever, my goal is peace. My goal here is peace, and I'm just here to be myself. And so when I interact with these people, they don't really necessarily consciously know that that's what's happening, but on some level, I am being a force of healing in this situation because I am allowing myself to shine, and I can't help it. That's how I was created. I can't help but be a force for healing in the world. It's not anything I'm doing on purpose. It's just me being myself. And that's the most humble posture we can have. And if we can get up in the morning and orient ourselves toward that humility, and then during the day every so often reorient ourselves to that humility, and before we go to bed at night, reorient ourselves to that humility, then all we're doing is aligning ourselves with our true nature and allowing things to happen as they naturally are supposed to, without our interference. When we try to fix things, we try to fix people, we try to fix situations, we try to fix ourselves, that's the arrogance coming in. Like, I know what's going to work. I know what I want. I know what they need. I know what the situation needs. Well, maybe you do and maybe you don't. But look at your track record. If you were so smart, you'd be in a real different place right now. So when I notice myself doing that now, what am I going to do? I'm going to say, wait a minute. I don't know what the right thing is. I don't know. But infinite intelligence knows. And infinite intelligence obviously sent me here. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to say, how I'm supposed to act, but I do know that I need to be humble. How do I be humble? Be myself. Shine. Be myself. And when I'm myself and I start to shine, infinite intelligence takes over and takes care of all the details, and it happens through me. And so my presence is essential for that healing to take place, but it wasn't because I had the right plan for fixing things. I took my fixing out of the equation completely and allowed myself to be a vessel for the healing that is infinite intelligence, that does know what to do. You see the difference? One is humble and one is arrogant. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. This was my great supreme pleasure, as it always is. And until next time, blessed be.